I moved to an island on Lake Michigan for the summer. It's a touristy area, and you can make decent money in the summer. My aunt owns a bar and grill and motel, so I figured why not. I just went through a breakup after a 6-year relationship, and have been battling issues with depression and anxiety for over a year now, so I figured this would be a nice change of scenery. I'm staying with my older cousin at a cabin her mom owns, approximately a mile and a half away from where we both work. We're both women. This island is basically nothing but woods and forest. It's very beautiful, but it's very remote. Most of the roads are unpaved, and there's only street lights on the main road. At night, it is pitch black. Our cabin is smack dab in the middle of the woods. I don't have a car with me on the island. I just bike to wherever I want or need to go. One night I worked the closing shift as a server at my aunt's restaurant. I finished closing up the restaurant and said goodbye to my aunt's partner, who was still in the kitchen. I left through the side door of the kitchen and started biking down the main road. On my route to and from work, I pass a bar where the locals like to hang out. Some tourists go there too, of course, as they go everywhere. But that bar is like Cheers to the islanders. Keep in mind, this is the only paved road on the entire island, and the only road with streetlights. It was dark out. I only had my little bike headlight to guide me once I got off of the main road. Anyway, I'm riding past a local hangout bar like I always do, when some guy outside the bar says hi to me. This isn't uncommon. It's a small island and people say hi to everyone around here. I smile and say hi back without really looking at him. I'm still in polite server mode. I'm a little further down the road when this truck comes up from behind me on the road. I'm riding on the right shoulder of the road where there's a bike path, and instead of going around me, the truck stays behind me. But we were coming up to an intersection, so I figured that was why. We get to the intersection and I turn left, leading me onto an unpaved gravel road in the pitch black. The truck turns behind me and continues following me. I figure, okay, there's some houses on this road. Maybe this is where he stays. We pass all of the houses on that road, with him still hot on my trail. And now we're in the deep woods. As we continue into the deep roads, he starts following closer and closer behind me until I can feel the heat of his truck on my back. I get to a curve in the road. After the curve leads to the road my cabin is on. I don't want to go down that road because my road is a dead end, with my cabin being the dead end. And I don't want this truck person to know where I'm living. So instead of going around the curve, I lean to the side and let myself fall off of my bike and into the ditch in the woods. Luckily, the truck keeps going around the curve. I sigh with relief and think I'm safe. I lay in the ditch for a few minutes, trying to get my heart rate to go back to normal. Then I see headlights coming. The same headlights that had been following me. My bike is still lying on the side of the road, and the driver knows I'm still there. They stop next to my bike at the curb. A guy leans out of the window and shouts, "Next time you'll look at me when I say hi to you, you fucking bitch." He then speeds off down the road, spraying gravel everywhere, and I'm crying at this point, and just lay in the ditch, quietly sobbing. Finally, after a good amount of time, without this crazy guy returning, I get back on my bike and head home. I'm so thankful all he did was yell at me, and didn't get out of his car and come after me. Random guy from the bar. Let's not meet. This happened a couple years ago when I lived in Texas and worked at a small pizzeria in town. My dad needed to use my car that day, so I just walked to work. It was maybe like a 3-mile walk. About a half-mile from work, a guy joins me on the sidewalk. We exchange pleasantries, and he tells me he sees me walking to work all the time. I tell him I hardly ever walk to work, and he must have me confused for someone else. He lets it be, and we both walk to the front door of the restaurant in silence and part ways. I then proceed to work an 8 to 10 hour shift. As I'm clocking out, the guy from earlier walks in again. I thought it a bit strange, but decided to help him anyway. He was picking up another pizza. "I'm kind of a pizza addict," he says while winking. I hand him his box and we both walk out at the same time. Great, nothing he'd done had been particularly creepy at this point, but I just got a weird vibe from him. Who eats that much pizza in one day? We don't make small talk this time, instead he follows very closely behind me. I'm starting to get uneasy at this and decide to cross the street to the other sidewalk. He follows. Now I'm scared. I start to power walk and he does the same. I finally just stopped dead in my tracks, whipped around, and trying to sound confident said, "Can I help you with something?" With a creepy smile he says, "You can help me eat this pizza." I say something like, "Thanks, but I don't have much of an appetite for pizza these days." And he says as I'm turning around, "Well then maybe you can just let me eat you." Okay, that's really fucking creepy, I thought, and then resumed to power walk before just breaking into a sprint. To my horror, he starts to run too. I'm starting to feel helpless at this point. It was about 11 p.m. in a quiet neighborhood with no one in sight. I got my phone out with 911 dialed, just in case. I decided to cross the street again, just to see if he really was following me. He crossed as well, and that sealed it for me. I hit the call button and started frantically telling the operator my situation when I glanced behind me and a familiar car was slowly pulling up. My car. Thank God it was my dad. I flagged him down and hopped in the passenger seat with my heart beating a mile a minute. I explained to the operator that it was fine now and hung up. Then explained to my dad what had happened, which he reacted like any dad would and freaked out. He bought me mace to keep on my keychain from then on. I saw the Pizza Addict a lot throughout the year I worked there, but I never walked to work again. I'm not sure what his intentions were or if they were harmless, but literally chasing someone down isn't the way to convey your interest in them. So Pizza Addict, let's not meet ever again, please. At the time, I was about 16 years old, and I'm a female nerd. I used to go to a comic book store in my town to play Magic the Gathering, whether it be Friday Night Magic or a random day of the week. A few friends and I were talking online and agreed to meet at the comic book store. My sister and her boyfriend at the time decided to meet at the comic book store as well, so she walked me to the store around 4 p.m. and told me she would return when it closed at 6:30. I sit down and wait for my friends. They meet up with me but are only able to stay until 5:30. So we sat and played Magic for the time they were there. While we played in one corner, there was a group playing Pathfinder. My friends left and I decided to just wait until my sister could come and get me. At the time, I didn't have a phone and wouldn't have one until later that year. As I sat alone, one of the guys playing Pathfinder calls me over. "You look so lonely over there. Come and sit with us. We won't bite." John calls over to me. I hate confrontation and would hate to seem rude at this time, so I join them. I sit far enough to feel comfortable, but John scoots a little closer to me. He starts talking, and for the most part I'm just drowning him out. All of a sudden, I hear him saying something along the lines of, "You know, you're really pretty. Yeah, I'm a furry, and it's so hard to find a date once in a while." I seize up and start to have a bit of an anxiety attack. I look at the time and realize that it's about time to go. They stay open until the game is over. It's a little bit after 6:30, and my sister and her boyfriend are still not there. I felt myself begin to panic, thinking of why they aren't there, and the possibility of being stalked, or worse, killed by this guy. I stand outside the comic book store while they lock the doors. Everyone's going their separate ways. John gets on his moped and scoots near me. "Hey, do you want to ride home? I don't think a lovely girl like you should be walking home alone." I explained that I was waiting for my sister and her boyfriend to pick me up, and we were going to hang out at her boyfriend's place. He smiles and relaxes. "Then I'll wait here with you." I feel so sick, I just want him to leave me alone, waiting for my sister. She finally shows up about 15 minutes late. I look at John and let him know that they are here and he can go home. I run over to my sister and her boyfriend. I look at them with scared eyes and just say, "SOS, get out of here." We start walking and John continues slowly behind us. So we go to her boyfriend's apartment and hide out. John waited outside for approximately 2 hours. It was terrifying. We ran into him a few more times when we would go to the comic book store, and every time my stomach would churn. I told my nerd boys about him, and that whenever we decided to leave, that I need them to walk me home. John continued to do very uncomfortable things. Things such as stabbing himself in the arm to show off his pain tolerance, and asking me about friends who were underage and if they were single, or showing us all pictures of his privates when nobody asked. Things that would make us, or anyone else, all wish he was just a nightmare. He continued to try and follow me home, but every time, we would walk somewhere safe until he would leave, so he would never find out where we lived. We found out a month or so after all these events that he moved into the same apartment building that my sister's boyfriend at the time lived in. Every time they would run into him, he would say something threatening, along the lines of, "Be a shame if someone were to get hurt, or worse." Even after my sister and him broke up, he continued to threaten him until he moved out. I had moved away after graduation and moved back home about 2 years ago, all this time hoping that I would never run into him again. I was working at a convenience store about half a year ago, working the graveyard shift, just finishing it up. We had a rush of people, and there he was, John, even more uncomfortable than before. Feeling like I was going to throw up or sob, I ran into the back and waited until he left. I apologized to my coworker and told him about John. And to John, let's not meet again. Hey scaredy cats, thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll never miss out on any of the stories. If you have any stories that you'd like for me to read, you can find the links for submissions in the description below.